guys. I'm just fresh off the movie of the well, you see on the screen, Midway, which had a absolutely phenomenal ensemble cast. Uh, Blinking, you'll miss some of the people. There's too many names, but you can see, Ed Skern, uh, Nick Jonas, he plays a badass. Aaron Eckhart, he plays Colonel Doolittle. Luke Evans, he plays the CAG. Basically, Ed Skern plays a pilot and a squadron commander. Dennis Quaid, he plays Bull Halsey. I can never remember this gentleman's name for the life of me. He plays Isiroko Yamamoto. And I don't know if I'd have cast him for this, but Woody Harrelson, he plays Chester Nimitz, of all people. And he didn't do a bad job of it. He was not exactly who I would have picked for Admiral Nimitz, but hey, he did a pretty good job. All right, well, what do we got here? Before we go into spoilers, I got my overall view. I give this movie probably about an 8 out of 10. Pretty good movie, but it does have its problems. It was generally a good war film. It was shot pretty good, though sometimes a little over the top and a little bombastic. The performances were delivered well. Acting was not a problem. Like I said, huge ensemble cast. You'll see a couple of people you'll recognize. There's Ragnar's son, his oldest son, the older actor. He plays a Navy officer that you see for a little bit. It was a serviceable enough movie, but like I said, there were problems, and now we're gonna run into the spoiler. So if you don't want this spoiled, besides the fact that we won the Battle of Midway. Actually, no. Before we go into spoilers, one other thing that surprised me, it was actually a decently balanced, fair look at both the Japanese and the American side. We'll definitely talk about that more in the spoiler section. I was actually surprised by this. They didn't, completely crap on the Japanese. They actually treated them with honor and respect. It was actually quite surprising. This movie definitely had a lot of hallmarks from like the movie Gettysburg, where they actually showed evenly the North and the South. And this one, they showed evenly between the Japanese and the Americans. They have all the hallmarks of how signal intelligence figured it out, uh, which I don't think is a spoiler. I mean, it was showed in the original Midway, and it's kind of historical knowledge. Uh, just everything. Okay, now we're going to get into spoilers, and this is where I'm going to start drawing out a lot of my problems. Number one, this movie, while ambitious, rushed way too much through stuff. I mean, first off, we had the intelligence officer. I can never remember his name for the life of me, but we spent a lot of time with him. In fact, we opened with him in Japan in 1937 as he was a naval attaché before becoming the intelligence officer for the Pacific Fleet. Then it jumps to Midway, and we spend about 25 minutes with the Battle of Midway. Actually, I don't know, maybe about 20 minutes, about between 15 and 25 minutes. But we actually see the Battle of Midway all over again. This is where you'll see the guy that plays Ragnar Lothbrok's son, his oldest son. But yeah, he plays an officer. He gets killed on the Arizona. We do spend a lot of time from the point of view of the USS Enterprise, CB6. In fact, that's where we have Admiral Halsey, Jonas, Luke Owens, Ed Skern. He's a dive bomber pilot. He's the CAG. We spent a lot of time in the Enterprise. We see the aftermath of them coming into Pearl Harbor after the attack. And then you see the original Admiral who basically got fired after Pearl Harbor happened, and you see Woody Harrelson in D.C. getting told, "You're in charge. President wants you. Go out there and hold the line till I can get you some forces," which he does. We see a quick run through, about 15 minutes, about the attack on the Marshall Islands during early 1942. We rush right into and you know, it's back and forth. Sometimes you see Ed Skrein with his wife, who's played with this by this woman right here. Every once in a while, you see her when they come back in the port, then they go back out. It jumps a lot of it shows like what it's like to be out back and forth. You see, you know, Ed Skrein running a squadron on scouting missions and telling them, "Hey, practice your dive bombing because we're probably going to do it." They rush completely through the Battle of Coral Sea. In fact, they show Lexington sinking, Yorktown on fire, and the Enterprise showing up a day later after the battle. They don't even show the battle; they just show the aftermath. Which again, they're just rushing through the events that led up. You also see, actually, no, but before we get to the Coral Sea, you get to see Aaron Eckhart for about 10 minutes. You get the Doolittle raid, and I mean, they're just rushing to the events like Pearl Harbor, the Marshall Islands, the Doolittle raid, because Ed Skrein and his buddy come out and they say, "What the hell are bombers doing on the Hornet?" And you know, the Doolittle raid, and then they rush through the Coral Sea because the Enterprise is too late to get there. And then we spend some time building up to the battle where Signals Intelligence, which is my alma mater, because I have a Signals Intelligence for the Marine Corps, about Commander Rochefort, you know, basically, you know, piecing together and then them figuring out because AF, which was the code name for Midway, ran out of water. And then the Nimitz basically sold DC on, "I'm stacking everything on Midway. We're gonna," and you get to spend some time with USS Nautilus because she does, you know, track the Japanese Navy and tries to launch an attack but fails. They rush right through. And the Battle of Midway lasts maybe the last 30 or 45 minutes with maybe a little 5-minute wrap up afterwards, but they rush so quickly through the Battle of Midway. I mean, that was the problem with this movie overall, why it doesn't score higher. They they wanted to show the entire lead up. They rushed, running, screaming through Pearl Harbor, the Marshall Islands, like I said, the Doolittle raid, Coral Sea. They barely even showed it. They did show Halsey getting shingles and all that, and having to go in and being pulled out. You see Raymond Spruance for like 5 minutes out of the movie. If uh, I mean, you see the aborted torpedo attack from Midway and the carriers, which drove the cap down, and you know they quickly gloss over it like, "Hey, we need to get the cap back," and then the dive bombers come screaming in, and Ed Skrein takes out one carrier, and then he goes back out later that same day and pretty much takes out the Akagi. Well, first took out the Akagi, and then he took out the Hiryu that was left. I can never remember the carriers because I know it's the Akagi, the Kaga, the Shoryu, and the Hiryu. I think he took out the the Akagi, and the Hiryu. But anyways, I mean, we spent a lot of time with Ed Skrein up in the pilot, and the funny part is that for any of you Alito Battle Angels aficionados, Ed Skrein rear gunner was Alita's boyfriend. I thought that was funny. The guy he killed in one movie is his rear gunner in another movie. Nick Jonas, he plays a petty officer. He plays a rear gunner. He does get killed. Spoiler there. Basically, he's with the dive bomber squadron. He gets chased down, and his plane gets shot down by Zeros. Him and his officer get captured by the Japanese. The Japanese try to pump him for information. He says, "Hey, can I have a cigarette?" And then go F yourself. And they throw him overboard, tied to an anchor, and he goes down to the bottom, dead. Poor bastard. Yeah, I mean, that was probably the biggest problem is they wanted to show all the lead up that happened to the battle, but they didn't really focus on it. It was just a big rush through from start to finish. They didn't spend enough time talking about Midway. I mean, granted, they spent enough time talking about the lead up and, you know, the intel officer figuring out, hey, something big going on, and Rochefort cracking the code. That was given proper time, but we weren't really, except for times that Ed Skrein went home and got to see his wife and his daughter, there was really no time to breathe, process the battle. They gave us time markers, but they just boom, 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 boom. It was just nonstop. I mean, we completely rushed through the fact that the torpedo bombers got freaking massacred but they opened up the window for the dive bombers, and then it was basically dive bombers came back. Owen Wilson's hurt, so Ed Skrein has to leave another squadron, and Ed Skrein's character had been given really bad oxygen. I can't remember what he ended up sucking down, but it ended up like pretty much searing his lungs. And he finishes the battle, but when the battle's over, he's basically spitting up blood, and he's basically pulled from flight duty after he takes down both carriers. But still, it's just they were just running through the Battle of Midway. I mean, we barely. I mean, the initial assault by the Japanese on Midway Island maybe lasts a minute, and then it's over, and it's like, quite honestly, the Charlton Heston Midway movie was better. We spent more time on the actual Battle of Midway and less time on the build-up. But they seriously rushed through this movie, going hell for leather from right about the time Nimitz shows up and starts ordering the Pacific Fleet on the Marshall, and we're off to the races. But like I said, overall the acting was good. The cinematography, special effects was really good. Like when they go into a dive on a dive bomber and flak's going up everywhere, you feel like you're in the cockpit with them. And you got your rear sailors screaming, 4,000 feet, 3,000 feet. Like all that, I mean, that was well done. And I remember the last attack when Ed Skrein is taking his dive bomber in on the last carrier. He screams back to his gunner, I can't remember his name for the life. He's like, "What's my altitude?" It's like, "I can't. We got fighters on our tail." And it's just like, and Ed Skrein's like, "I'll screw it. I'm going to eyeball this one." But on the Japanese side, they did a really good job with the cast. Not Admiral like Gumo, the rear admiral who was in charge of the last carrier. I mean, him deciding to go down with the ship. The captain of the ship wanted to stay with them as they're torpedoing the last carrier that got hit because they don't want it to fall in enemy hands. A young officer says, "I want to stay with you," but the admiral's like, "No, you young men need to go home and fight for the emperor. But I'm going down with the ship." And it was treated with it wasn't cartoonish. It was treated with respect and honor. I mean, just the biggest problem with this movie was that they just flew through it. And I mean, flew. There was just no time to process that the Marshall Campaign happened, that Coral Sea happened. Barely even processed Pearl Harbor. And that was the biggest problem. They jam-packed about the first almost year of the war, first like 9 months of the war into a 2-hour movie, and this is kind of what happened. But yeah, that's pretty much my review of Midway. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was still a good movie. It was just way too rushed. It was just boom, just gone off to the races. They needed to slow down. They needed to cut out some of the stuff, like the fact that Enterprise even showed up the Coral Sea a day late. That didn't even need to be there. Or the whole reason, Enterprise was held, in the Coral Sea area because they were afraid of an attack down there. That could have been glossed over, and we didn't even need to see Halsey's receipt of that order or anything like that. I mean, they just focused in on too much stuff. I mean, on a big, wide spectrum, and didn't really focus in on certain things. I mean, Ensign Gay, yes, I know it's bad, but I mean, they showed him going into the water as a torpedo bomber and seeing like pretty much the whole battle from like in the water as the battle is going on, but there's like no mention of who he is. I only know that because I know the Battle of Midway and I've seen the original movie, and a little more time was focused on him. But from a storytelling point, the original Midway that was done, I think, in 1970 something with Charlton Heston was better from a story point of view, but from cinematic, this was far superior. Anyways, I've been rambling on about God knows how long, but that's my review of the movie Midway. I would suggest it and go check it out, but I will warn you, they rush through this movie. They run screaming through it. It's been Too little time on every section and not enough time on the battle proper. But anyways, I'm Jeff. I'm the Wolf. Again, my overall view, 8 out of 10. It was a good movie, just rushed. Catch y'all next time.